Good afternoon and welcome to today's webinar, Building Sustainability and Resiliency in Pennsylvania with Microgrids. I'm Matt Reese, GreenGov Deputy Director. Today's webinar is co-hosted and supported through our partnership with Penn State Sustainability. The GreenGov Council was established as the Commonwealth Agency's Lead by Example program, promoting energy conservation and sustainable governance. Our charter sets forth performance goals for Commonwealth agencies, ultimately steering the reduction of greenhouse gas emissions within our portfolio. Specific goals focus on annual energy reductions, high performance buildings, fleet electrification, and the use of renewable electricity. Visit the GreenGov website to see how agencies meet these performance goals. You'll find a host of information, including agency certification checklists, past webinar recordings, and portfolio tools that may assist you in developing and achieving your own performance goals. Now I'm pleased to introduce our friend, colleague, and partner at Sustain Penn State, Dr. Peter Boger. Peter is the Director for Engagement at Sustain Penn State and is responsible for the development of strategic programming and partnerships, such as this one with the GreenGov Council, that help Penn State leverage its resources and promote sustainability throughout our Commonwealth.
Thank you so much, Matt, and thank you everybody for joining us on this fine autumnal Friday. We are very excited to be kicking off this 7th webinar series with the GreenGov Council and Penn State Sustainability. Hard to believe it's gone by so fast, but those of you who attended last week's Sustainability Week will know that this is a partnership that really has been focused on trying to build community across the entire Commonwealth of people from all different backgrounds, education, government, business, nonprofit, who are interested in sustainability and thinking about how we can build a more sustainable and resilient Pennsylvania. Sustain Penn State, the office I'm in, is one of 3 offices that collectively makes up Penn State Sustainability, and we are charged with trying to make Penn State more sustainable in its operations, its approach to education and empowering student success, and in its land grant missions serving the Commonwealth. And it's really in this last part of the mission that we are excited to be partners with Matt, Mark, and the GreenGov Council. Thank you all for coming. We do encourage you to please come to more of these. They were every month, and so hopefully you've gotten a flyer and are going to sign up for more, especially after hearing our great presenters today. But we are delighted to be a partner in this and so grateful to have you all here. I'll turn it back over to Matt.
Thanks so much, Peter. And yeah, hard to believe this is our certainly years past in the webinar series. And please check out the GreenGov website with past years recordings. And as we work to get started, I'm happy to introduce our speakers today. John Wetzel. John is an energy program specialist within the Energy Programs Office of the Pennsylvania Department of Environmental Protection and a member of the Energy Assurance Team responsible for, we'll ask everybody to mute their a member of the Energy Assurance Team responsible for Emergency Support Function 12, ensuring energy-related support during disasters. John's team works to reduce energy supply disruptions, helping communities with recovery efforts following disaster events. John has previously worked at several electric generation stations and in the natural gas industry, focusing on energy production and transmission. Throughout his career, John has played a key role on the development and delivery of multiple clean energy projects, leading to increased resiliency and reduction of greenhouse gas emissions. Brittany Prischak. Brittany is the first director of the Department of Sustainability for Allegheny County and is leading the integration of sustainable best practices throughout county operations. Specific goals include transitioning the county's fleet to alternative fuels, energy and water efficiency measures, renewable energy projects, increasing sustainable purchasing and using sustainable materials, and increasing the waste diversion. Brittany is now leading the development of Allegheny County's first ever climate action plan and the continuation of community partnerships, fostering a more sustainable community for all. Chad Willis. Chad serves as the Vice President of Planning, Environmental, and Sustainability for the Allegheny County Airport Authority. Chad oversees a team responsible for capital projects, environmental compliance, and sustainable clean energy for the Airport Authority, which operates Pittsburgh International and Allegheny County airports. Prior to this role, Chad held similar roles with the Sacramento County Department of Airports, Phoenix Mesa Gateway Airport Authority, and the Arizona Department of Transportation as an environmental consultant and researcher, and also environmental consultant and researcher for the U.S. Department of Defense. Chad trained for his pilot's license at the age of 17 and has been a part of aviation ever since and has served as past chair Airports Council International's Environmental Working Group and currently serves as their North American representative to the World Environment Standing Committee. Chad holds a Master of Arts in Biological Anthropology and is a certified environmental professional, accredited airport executive, and vision sustained professional, and a certified environmental and safety compliance officer. Chad recently completed the Chief Sustainability Officer program at MIT, which prepares senior executives with the skills and tools to lead an organization's sustainable profile. So thank you to our speakers, and I'll now hand over the stage here and we'll get started.
All right. Thanks, Matt. I'm going to share my screen here. As Matt said, I'm John Wetzel from the Energy Programs Office within the Department of Environmental Protection. I wanted to say thank you to everybody for tuning in today on your lunch break to hear us talk a little bit about the Energy Programs Office and some of the work we've been doing with microgrids. The Energy Programs Office is a non-regulatory office located within the Department of Environmental Protection. We support energy policies and programs that prevent pollution, protect our environment, improve public health, and access to affordable energy. We focus on energy conservation, advanced energy technologies, energy security, education, outreach, and climate. There was a little background noise at my introduction, so I'm just going to quickly go over it again. My position falls under the energy security and resiliency focus, part of the energy assurance team, and then our team works with emergency support function 10 and emergency support function 12. Emergency support function 10 is mainly responds to spills and hazardous material fires and things of that nature. Emergency support function 12, which really relates to microgrids, focuses on preventing energy supply shortages, helps communities recover from energy supply disruptions. And we also work with various other state agencies to keep critical facilities open in times of disaster. And we help communities recover when there are natural disaster events. And really, microgrids are just one of the tools that we can use to improve energy resiliency in PA. DEP's microgrid work. We utilized state SEP formula grant and partnered with Smart Electric Power Alliance, which I'll refer to as SEPA from here on out. Also going to refer to Energy Programs Office as EPO, just to be conscious of time. And we partnered with Smart Electric Power Alliance to conduct a study titled Safeguarding PA Resilient Microgrids in Our Community. The study identified critical facilities in the most vulnerable areas for potential microgrid sites where they could be constructed. We also used various tools and criteria to develop this study with SEPA. Some of the tools we used were the ICE tool, Interruption Cost Estimator, and the POET tool, Power Outage Economics tool. And really, we use these things to kind of streamline the microgrid development process and help with sort of feasibility studies, trying to narrow down the best places to construct a microgrid. The study evaluated critical facilities in high-risk areas. We analyzed circuit data from electric utility companies across the state. We also took into account natural hazard scores. That information, I believe, came from FEMA. And also we looked at energy equity and environmental justice. Some of the facilities that some examples of the 16 types of facilities that we looked at were hospitals, emergency shelters, schools, grocery stores, police stations, fire stations, wastewater treatment plants, nursing homes, and so on. There were several others. Not going to go through them all, but yeah, we looked at several different types. We actually analyzed almost 24,000 locations, and we narrowed these down using the different scoring criteria. I did say about the natural hazards, the environmental justice, and really the purpose of the critical facility came into play also with the scoring. Utility planning, operation, and I did say about circuit data. So we then were able to narrow down the results because looking at 24,000 sites, can be kind of complicated when someone's looking at a study. So we narrowed them down to actually 1% of the best possible candidates for microgrid construction. And what came out of that was a study, of course, that I just talked about, the study named Safeguarding Pennsylvania, Resilient Microgrids in Our Community. But also a really nice mapping tool came out of this. SEPA did a fantastic job developing this tool, and we're constantly working on this tool, making it better, improving it. But it actually lists all these microgrid sites and all these critical facilities by type and by score. So I'm sure probably someone's watching this webinar today that has their critical facility on this map. We identified 28 front of the meter microgrid deployment sites, and 240 critical facilities were identified for behind the meter microgrid sites. And there were 3 different microgrid design scenarios. Kind of get into that a little bit here. So each site was looked at, and there was a case study done. There was 3 different scenarios. There was a low renewable scenario with registered 4 hours of battery storage and solar. There was a mid scenario that had 12 hours of battery storage and, of course, solar. And then also there was a high resiliency scenario where you would have 24 hours of power, throughout any kind of event on battery storage, but then also you would have the solar still producing, charging those batteries, And just to go over quickly, we have all this information available publicly, which I think is great that anyone can go into the map, find out what their site scored, find out, actually what their county's resiliency score is, just a number of different metrics. The data in there is just amazing how much SEPA was able to capture. And I think it's great that we were able to share it with everyone. So the first link that I have here is simply for our energy assurance page, and there's a lot of valuable information on there. We have some different types of planning for energy emergencies, different types of information on hospitals and other critical facilities on how they can plan for energy emergencies. And of course, we have the mapping tool linked on there. And we also have the study. If after this webinar, if it piques your interest, please go ahead on there and research a little bit and enjoy. It's definitely worth the read. So on that note, I'm going to conclude my presentation and send it over to Brittany or Chad.
Thanks, John. Certainly appreciate it. And I think that we have Brittany up next.
Yeah, let me share my screen. Can you see my slides?
Yeah.
Perfect. Okay, great. Thanks everyone for having me. So my name's Brittany Prustak. I'm the director for Allegheny County's Department of Sustainability. And I'm excited to talk a little bit about how we're looking at microgrids and the work that we're doing here in Allegheny County. Come on. There it goes. So kind of two things I'm going to be touching on. One is we are actually doing our first climate action plan here in Allegheny County, and we're looking at not just carbon emissions reductions, but also resiliency strategies. So I wanted to talk a little bit about some of our planning effort, and then I'm going to get into some of the microgrid feasibility studies that we've been doing for both county facilities and then another community that's moving some microgrid project forward. So first off, this is Allegheny County. It's our first climate action plan. We kicked it off earlier this year and been doing a great amount of engagement over the summer to help build out a framework. And what we recognized in our kind of initial engagement with the community was that while the carbon emissions reduction is important, the other component that our community is really interested and sees a value in is improvements for quality of life and resiliency solutions. And so we've recognized that our goal for this plan is going to be that our communities and environment are healthy, and that we're also going to prioritize affordable energy, convenient transportation, healthy housing, and economic opportunities for our residents. And so through that piece, we've also identified some foundational values that we're going to be using to evaluate priorities. And this is kind of where the potential opportunity of microgrids comes in. So for economic opportunities, we're looking at increasing economic prosperity by creating opportunities and lowering costs, especially around utilities. We're looking at healthy communities and environment, so improving the health of the people and the health of our local ecosystems. And then our third value is equity and inclusion. We're looking to ensure equitable access to climate solutions and meaningful participation in decisions, prioritizing our historically underserved communities. And so all of this effort here to help kind of build out these foundational goals and values to help us identify not just the strategies, but how do we prioritize those strategies, helped us recognize that resiliency was a pretty important component to our residents. And so through that vein, that's kind of where we see microgrids as a really great opportunity. Primarily, why microgrids? Recently, earlier this year in April, we actually had a massive extreme weather event that actually shut down power to about 400,000 people within Allegheny County. And it took almost 9 full days for Duquesne Light, one of our local utilities, to get power back on. So a significant outage that was widespread, impacted a great number of residents. And so through this concept, we started recognizing even before this storm, but recognizing the importance and the benefit of microgrids to help our residents when there are significant power outages, that they have a little bit more reliable power and electricity, especially for our vulnerable populations, our senior citizens, our low-income families. And so these are some reasons why I think this could be a really cool strategy for Allegheny County as we think about it. So as I mentioned, builds community resiliency. It's going to support our critical facilities too. So not just those vulnerable populations. We have a number of senior citizen homes. The county owns 4 of those. In addition, we have our 911 emergency center. We also have the Fire and Police Academy. That's a training facility, but during emergencies, it's also an EOS, I think is what it's called. But it's essentially a location where they'll actually start dealing with the emergency as a backup opportunity. And so thinking about those types of critical facilities, and that's just what Allegheny County owns. We have 130 different municipalities, and each one of them has emergency services folks and critical facilities. And so there's a number of opportunities here to kind of help support that. In addition, there's some environmental benefits, especially on the carbon reduction opportunity through supporting some renewable energy development at the local level. And so we actually completed for Allegheny County in 2023 one of the critical facility energy feasibility studies. It was funded by PDP, and Protogen was the consultants on that project. We looked at 2 of the county's critical facilities. The first was one of our, it was Kane Scott. It's one of our senior living facilities. And then we also looked at the Allegheny County Police and Fire Department. And so these two facilities, the Fire and Police Academy, it's actually a larger campus that has one large training facility for the county police that's also shared by the fire training folks. And then it has a decent sized parking lot. And then up above, we actually looked at the firehouse is up above where they actually house all the fire trucks and stuff. And so what we realized is there were some really great opportunities for solar on those buildings. And so that's the lower right one here is the fire facility. It's a large warehouse building, great direction for solar heading or facing south. And so opportunities for some efficiency there, and the amount of solar there was actually looking to offset a decent percentage of the campus. The one in the upper left is the Kane Scott facility, and so we recognized that there was a number of opportunities on the roof of that facility. In addition, we looked at some additional solar over the parking lots, looking at some canopy solar to try and offset as much of the electricity consumption, but also help support that backup system. So we were able to complete those feasibility studies. We are actually moving forward with some solar on both of these locations. We haven't figured out the battery component to turn it into the microgrid piece, but at least we'll get the renewable energy set up. The other one I wanted to mention is Sharpsburg Borough, which is one of our 130 municipalities. They actually launched a climate action plan in 2021 and then are also members of the Tri-Borough Eco District. If you aren't familiar with that group, fascinating co-collaboration between multiple municipalities. This is a group that is Etna Borough, Millvale Borough, and Sharpsburg Borough, all three right along the river, heavy flooding, some major damage, constant flooding. And so they kind of coordinated their efforts and looked into the Eco District program and actually were certified in 2021. And they're moving some really cool planning projects forward, thinking about moving their critical facilities out of flooding areas, as well as just building resiliency into their communities. So Sharpsburg Borough was actually awarded $1 million grant towards a resiliency microgrid, specifically looking at their Department of Public Works garage and yard. So really excited to see this project move forward, but I highly recommend. Really cool community. So I just wanted to kind of highlight some of the things that we're doing here, and I'm excited to hear a little bit more. The airport, the Allegheny County Airport Authority, is going to talk about their microgrid project. So some cool things happen in Allegheny County. Thanks.
Oh, fantastic. And thanks so much, Brittany. And up next, we have Chad.
Right. Everyone, give me 1 second to get this presentation up.
It's good, Chad. Thanks.
Okay, are you able to see that well?
Yep.
Okay, perfect. So I'm going to chat a little bit today about our experience here at Pittsburgh International Airport. We have developed a microgrid already on our facility, and we have been up and running on that facility now for about 4 years. And so I'm gonna kind of talk you through kind of what we did, why we did it, and what benefits we got from doing that. So kind of first and foremost, kind of the background of why we did this, I think, is really important. From running an airport perspective, you know, if we are ever without power, it really impacts our region, right? We're shutting down the potential for emergency services to fly in and out, people to continue operating commerce, and of course, you know, just travelers in general. And so it causes a very large impact locally if an airport is ever without power and has to close. But on a national scale, we've seen a couple of very high profile airport power outages that have happened that have had major impacts across the nation. So a few years ago, in fact, Atlanta International Airport had a multi-day sustained power outage that backed up air traffic all over the country and ultimately cost Delta Airlines, was the primary carrier at Atlanta, about $60 to $80 million in operational losses just from that period of time. So we took a look at ourselves and said, you know, we really don't ever want to be in that situation as an airport. And so we went down the path to try to make sure that we can have resiliency as our primary goal for developing a microgrid. But if we're going to develop a microgrid, certainly resiliency is the primary goal, but we also want to try to save some money, be more sustainable, and kind of make some synergies with other things on our campus. So you can kind of see here some of those key points, essentially lowering our costs, being more sustainable, and of course, using the on-site resources that we have to really make sense of a program like this. So kind of what we did here is we kind of looked at our campus. We figured out what areas we could energize on our own versus what we couldn't from other sources. And essentially what matters here when looking at this is that we have a very large campus at Pittsburgh International. It's almost 9,000 acres. It's a very large area. And most of that infrastructure for electrical distribution was all our infrastructure that we owned. So it's a behind the meter situation where basically we own a ton of infrastructure and we had a primary feed coming in from Duquesne Light. And so we looked at how we could produce that power within the footprint of our own infrastructure. And so we went about doing that in a couple of ways, right? We have our primary campus area. You can kind of see here a little diagram. We have some natural gas generators as well as a solar facility that makes that work. So just for some orientation, you can see in this diagram, everything within the kind of large yellow outline is what we generally call our airfield. That area is where we have our airport operations, things like all of our aircraft, all of our gates, all of our parking facilities, all the navigational aids for planes to land, hotel, etc. All of that kind of fits within that boundary. And those are the things that we really needed to make sure were resilient and would not be subject to a power outage. And so that area is primarily, fully powered through our microgrid gas generators. There's a separate piece, which is a solar field that's kind of on the bottom of that diagram. The solar from that facility is being net metered to all of the other facilities that fall outside of that area. There's some reasons behind that. There's some technical reasons. The biggest one really has to do with just the way that the infrastructure was developed in some of those locations. Basically, everything on the airfield we controlled and we could energize it. Everything outside of that had various feeds from various sources. And so a net metering situation to use solar there made a lot of sense. So just a little bit about those generators I mentioned. So basically, we went over capacity with generators to make sure that we had more than enough power. So we designed this so that there's 5 generators. Each of them is about 4.3 megawatts each, producing a little over 20 megawatts of power. We have a peak demand of about 14 megawatts here at the airport. And so we're able to make sure that we have all the power required at any given time, plus additional capacity. That additional capacity helped make the facility be more cost effective by being able to sell that excess power back to the grid. And of course, it helps us with our resiliency in other ways as well, where if we ever have maintenance that needs to happen at any of those generators, we have enough capacity that it will not impact any of our facilities. Important piece of this, we did this project essentially as a power purchase agreement, right? The airport provided land that we leased to a third party. We are purchasing that power directly from them. And we did not have to ultimately come up with the capital to build this. So it cost about $20 million or to $25 million or so to develop this facility. The airport did not pay any upfront capital costs. We essentially are just paying an electricity bill as part of this, but now we have resilient power. And one of the really great benefits of this is that we lowered our annual electrical costs by about $1 million a year. So it was a win on all fronts for us to have resilient power, to have cleaner power in some portions of our airport, very clean power because it's renewable, as well as to reduce our costs. So just a little bit about how this is connected. Really, we have a supply coming in from Duquesne Light that was our traditional power supply. We keep that connected at all times with an automatic switch gear. Essentially, if we ever were to not have power coming from our microgrid, right, we automatically just transition to grid power, and we have the grid power as backup. If for some very unforeseen circumstances happens where our microgrid is down for some reason and the grid power is down, we then have backup generators available at critical pieces of equipment on the airport so that we can maintain some level of operations, but it would not be the full campus. the facility itself has technicians that operate the facility that are essentially there in normal business hours, Monday through Friday. The rest of the time, they have people working in remote environments. They're able to control the entire facility remotely and be able to adjust on the fly if there's any issues. And then the other kind of major piece of this is a 3 megawatt solar facility. So when we're doing this, it was very important for us to have a renewables component. First and foremost, right, the natural gas that we're able to use on our facility, it was coming from natural gas wells that are already drilled on the airport. So that was a very convenient supply chain, logistically wise. But the other kind of key piece to that at the time, this facility came online, it was actually a much cleaner from emissions perspective because it was a brand new genset, right? So it's brand new facility. It's more modern than many of the others that are on the grid. So we're able to reduce the emissions that are associated with our electrical output immediately from day one, just from having a new modern and efficient plant. But we wanted to do more than that as well. So we had a renewable energy piece. So we identified a location on the airport that we really couldn't use for any other purposes and developed that for solar. The reason we couldn't use it for anything else is because that area was actually a closed landfill. So on that closed landfill, we were able to install solar panels that are powering all of those kind of ancillary facilities around the area. This was kind of a first of its kind sort of process for the state to permit a new solar facility on a capped landfill. We worked very closely with DEP on this one to make sure that we could do that in a way that's obviously not going to impact the cap on that landfill, but also is a repeatable process that other people could then employ elsewhere, right? So now there's a process in place where if there's a closed landfill somewhere else in the state, it can be now developed into solar, and that was kind of a not a completely novel concept, but new for our state to permit. Kind of as mentioned, we had a significant cost savings. I mentioned that we had about $1 million cost savings in our first year of operation. That was huge. What's actually been even bigger for us is that cost savings has increased over time. So as we've seen electrical rates going up over the last couple of years, that hasn't impacted the airport, and so our savings has increased over that time. This slide notes $1.5 million per year in cost savings. That was actually in 2024 dollars. 2025, it looks like that number has creeped up to about $2 million in savings over if we were buying that power from the grid. So the fact that we were able to lock in rates in a long-term deal also was very beneficial to us. And this is just my last slide here, just to kind of go out on a bit of a highlight here. We've gotten a bunch of awards for this, which is been rewarding in its own part, but really we didn't do any of this for rewards or awards or any of that kind of thing. We wanted to make sure we had resilient power, which was the key, and now we have resilient power, which is very important to us, and also to kind of increase our sustainability across the board and save some money. And so we hit the mark on all of those with this facility, and so we have been trying to make this a model that other people that run campuses primarily can emulate. We have been out talking about this project in various different locations. I can say now there's about 24 airports across the country now that are looking at various forms of microgrids now that they've seen us be able to do it successfully, as well as many other municipalities and college campuses and things. And so I think we're really starting to get momentum in building out this resilient infrastructure. And with that, that's all I got.
Fantastic job, and wow, the accolades are well deserved, and thanks to our speakers.
Absolutely.
And with that being said, I guess we'll now stop the recording